I have never measured you by that mountain. Hold that sentence. Let everything else settle. How long have you been reading that unmoved ridge as my verdict on you? Be honest. The mountain rose up across your road, and somewhere along the years you started treating its stillness as a message, as proof of a limit, as the day my love stopped short. Right now, while you listen, I want to take that reading out of your hands. This mountain has not moved since the day it first rose up. I know. I have been standing at its base with you every one of those days, closer than you have let yourself believe. I am not waiting for it to shift before I love you the way I already do. Long before you noticed how long this has taken, my covenant was already sitting beside the ridge. The way someone plants a lamp at the foot of a wall they cannot yet climb, so you would have light enough to see which of us has actually been standing still. You have watched almost everything else in your life change shape. The year on the calendar, the faces at your table, the version of yourself that used to believe this would be over by now. And this one obstacle has not shifted a single inch. Not last year, not the year before that. Before we walk any further, notice your shoulders. Where are they right now? They have climbed, somewhere up near the weight of all this. You did not decide that. Standing near a mountain long enough does it for you. Let them come down. Just a little. We will come back to them before this ends. You have a name for this mountain, even if you have never said it out loud to anyone who could do anything about it. Maybe it is a door that closed between you and someone you still set 2 plates for out of habit. Maybe it is a silence in a house that used to be loud, a chair that stays empty at the holiday table no matter how many years pass since it emptied. Maybe it is simpler and heavier than either of those. A weariness that will not lift no matter how you rearrange your days around it. A pattern in your family that keeps repeating itself down to the smallest detail. A prayer you have prayed so many times the words have worn smooth from use. You keep waiting for the ground to give. It keeps not giving. You have gotten good at describing this obstacle in a version small enough for other people to carry. At the market, at the office, in the pew beside someone who asks how you are. You give the short answer, the composed one, the one that fits inside a normal conversation without derailing it. Only late, alone, tracing the same ridgeline with your eyes, do you let yourself see the actual size of it, the whole unbroken wall of it, stretching further than the short answer ever let on. I have seen the long version every single time. You have not once had to give me the small one. You still have an old conversation saved somewhere, a text thread, or a note in the margin of a journal, from the season this first appeared. In it, you or someone close to you wrote down how sure you both were that it would be over by a particular spring. That spring came and went. Several more came and went after it. You do not reread that conversation often. Rereading it means admitting how confidently wrong the timeline was. And some part of you decided, a while ago, that being wrong about the timeline meant you had been wrong to hope at all. Those are 2 different things. The hope was never the mistake. Only the calendar was. I know exactly how long you have been standing at the base of it. Not roughly. Not in the general way a stranger might guess at your grief from across a room. I know the specific morning you first understood, the morning it became clear this would not resolve quickly. And I know every quieter morning since. The mornings you got up anyway and did the ordinary tasks of your day, with the crest still sitting exactly where it sat the day before. Nobody gave you an award for that. Nobody wrote it down. I did. Check your shoulders again. They have crept back up while we stood here naming things. That is what carrying does. Let them drop once more, and while they fall, notice something. You are still here, still upright, still capable of drawing air all the way down and letting it back out, even with the thing you cannot move sitting in full view of your life. That capacity did not come from the obstacle leaving. It came from somewhere else. Keep that distinction close as we go further in. Here is the first promise I want to set in front of you. Plainly. before we go anywhere near the harder parts. I am not waiting for this ridge to move before I love you the way I already love you. The love was never contingent on the outcome. It was settled before the obstacle appeared. It has held every day the obstacle has stood there unmoved, and it will hold on the far side of however this resolves. Whether that resolution looks like the mountain finally giving way, or looks like something else entirely that you cannot picture from where you are standing now. I am not rationing affection while I wait to see what happens to the ridge in your road. There is a rule you built for yourself somewhere along this stretch, one you never once spoke to anyone who might have talked you out of it. You decided that love proves itself by removal, that if I truly cared the way I say I care, the obstacle would already be gone. The door would already be open. The pattern would already be broken. And the fact that none of that has happened yet is evidence, hard evidence, that either my love has limits, or it was never quite what you were told it was. I want that rule named, plainly. An unspoken rule keeps running the show long after you have forgotten you were the one who said it, and this one has been quietly grading me against a standard I never signed on to. That rule sounds reasonable. It even sounds humble. Like the kind of conclusion a person reaches after trying every other explanation first. But notice what it actually requires of love. That love can only be verified by outcome. That faithfulness has to show up as a demolition before it counts as real. I do not run my covenant that way. I never have. The proof was never going to be the mountain disappearing on your timeline. The proof is what I'm about to show you. In writing. Older than your particular mountain and steadier than your particular doubt. Some of what has stood unmoved in your life has stood there for reasons you can name. A choice someone else made and will not unmake. A diagnosis that keeps returning no matter how carefully you have tried to manage the fear around it. A legal matter that drags on term after term with no resolution in sight. Some of it has no clear reason attached at all, just a long accumulation of ordinary hard seasons that hardened into something that will not give. Either way, I want to say this clearly. How large this ridge looks was not a measurement of how much I am willing to do. A mountain this large simply takes longer to move than a stone does. And longer is not the same as never, and never is not the same as forgotten. You have started comparing your particular ridge to other people's smaller hills, the way you would compare a slow recovery to someone else's quick one, and quietly wonder what you did to deserve the harder version. I want to correct that before it hardens into another rule you carry. I am not measuring out mercy in proportion to how impressive the obstacle looks from the outside. Some of the mountains that look smallest from a distance have taken the longest to move in private. And some of the ones that look impossible from where you are standing have already begun shifting, in ways too slow for you to have noticed yet. Here is what was written long before your particular ridge rose out of the ground. Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken, nor my covenant of peace be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. Isaiah 54, verse 10. Read that slowly. The order of it corrects something you have been assuming without realizing you were assuming it. The verse does not say the mountains will never be shaken. It grants, right up front, that they might be. That the hills themselves, the most permanent-looking features of the whole landscape, could someday be removed. What does not move is something else. What cannot be shaken loose, no matter what happens to the terrain around it, is the love and the covenant of peace. Notice what this means for you. I never promised you a world with no mountains in it. I promised you a love that outlasts every mountain that world will ever produce, including this one. Including the one you are standing in front of right now. The obstacle was never how the promise got measured. The promise was always bigger than the obstacle. On purpose, by design. Notice too who is speaking that promise. It is not a distant observer commenting on your situation from a safe elevation. It is the same voice that has compassion on you, named directly in the very sentence. Not compassion as a general policy toward the world. Compassion aimed at the specific person standing at the specific base of a specific ridge. Today, still, the mountains and the hills in that verse are not symbols invented for a sermon. They are the most permanent things the writer could imagine. The features of the land everyone assumed would outlast every generation that ever looked at them, and the promise chose them on purpose, as the very comparison it needed. If even those can be shaken loose, how much more sure is the love that will not be? There is an old saying about faith the size of a single small seed. Enough, spoken plainly, to ask a mountain to move, and for it to actually move. I did not say that to hand you a magic phrase for making the ridge disappear on command. I said it to correct the size you think your faith needs to be, before it qualifies as real faith at all. You have been waiting to feel a mountain's worth of confidence before you are willing to speak to your mountain even once. That was never the requirement. The seed is already enough. The size of the faith was never supposed to match the size of the obstacle. That was the entire point of choosing the smallest seed anyone could picture. Breathe in slowly through your nose now, the way you would at the base of an actual climb. Cold air moving further down than you expect it to. Let it go back out through your mouth, longer than it took to come in. You are not being asked to scale the whole ridge in this one breath. You are only being asked to notice something. Your body still knows how to draw in what it needs, even standing this close to a thing you cannot move. That is not nothing. That is the beginning of the kind of endurance this is actually going to require. I want to speak now to the part of you that has quietly started grading your own worth by how much of the ridge has shifted so far. You check the ridge line every morning the way some people check a scale, looking for the smallest sign of change. And when there is none, you fold that absence into a private verdict about how much faith you must not have, about how much you must be doing wrong, about how much less favored you must be than the people whose obstacles seem to be dissolving on a schedule you were never given. I never gave you that grading system. You built it out of watching a world that measures everything by visible progress, and then you applied it to a relationship that was never built for that kind of scorekeeping. Your worth was never a percentage of how far the mountain has moved. It was decided the same day the covenant was, on grounds that have nothing to do with the ridge, and no stretch of unchanged mornings has the power to shrink it. Stop keeping the quiet tally. You have been running against yourself. You were never standing trial for how immovable your circumstance looks from the outside. The mountain was never the measure. I also want to say this to the part of you that thinks doubting disqualifies you from any of this. Some mornings you believe every word of the covenant without hesitation. Other mornings you stand at the base of the ridge and privately wonder whether any of it is actually true. Whether you have simply gotten good at repeating language that helps you get through the day. Both of those mornings belong to the same faith. I did not reserve my promise for the version of you who never wavers. I gave it to the whole of you, wavering included. A covenant that only held on your strongest days would never have been strong enough to hold a mountain this size to begin with. Here is what active waiting actually looks like. I know you have been picturing something closer to a locked door than a road you can still walk. It looks like tending what will grow at the base of the ridge. The obstacle refuses to move. Tend anyway. A small patch of ordinary life kept alive right up against the rock. Watered on schedule, weeded on schedule, cared for as though it matters on its own terms. Not only as a consolation prize while you wait for the real thing. It looks like speaking to the obstacle plainly sometimes, without needing it to answer before you try again tomorrow. Faith was never required to see the crest move before it spoke. It was only ever required to keep speaking. There is a detail worth knowing about the people who have actually lived beside mountains, generation after generation. They do not wait for the mountain to leave. They cut terraces into the lower slopes. Narrow steps of soil, held up by low stone walls climbing the very rock that will not move. And on those steps they plant vines, olive trees, whole harvests, growing out of the side of the obstacle itself. The mountain never stopped being a mountain. It became the thing the fruit grew on. I am not asking you to pretend the ridge is a blessing. I am telling you the ground at its base is not wasted ground. Some of what I am growing in you right now can only grow on a slope. Let your shoulders fall again. They have climbed back up while we talked about waiting from wherever they were the last time you let them go. You have been carrying the weight of the ridge itself, as if holding your body tight enough might somehow keep the rest of your life from sliding too. It has not once worked that way. The ridge does not need you rigid to stay where it is. It was already staying there, regardless of how tightly you held yourself. Let the shoulders go. And notice that nothing about the obstacle changes when you do. The tension was never actually load-bearing. There is a spring at the base of nearly every mountain that ever mattered to anyone who had to live near one, fed by the same slopes that make the climb impossible, water working its way down through rock that will not move for anything else. I have kept a version of that spring running at the base of yours the entire time. Small provisions you stopped noticing because none of them looked like the one big provision you were praying for. The meal that showed up on a week you could not have managed to cook. The friend who called on the exact evening the silence had gotten unbearable. The strength to get up one more ordinary morning when getting up should have been harder than it was. None of that moved the mountain. All of it came from the same source the ridge has not been able to block. There is a second theme I want to lay down beside the first one. A covenant. This old was never meant to be understood from a single angle. The same steadiness that holds when the mountain will not move is the steadiness that has been protecting you inside a circumstance you did not choose and cannot end by yourself. I have been standing closer to the base of your particular ridge than you have given me credit for, not shouting instructions from the summit, not waiting at the top for you to finally arrive. Present at the exact elevation where you have actually been living this entire time. In the cold shadow, the mountain casts over the parts of your day nobody else sees. Some of you have been carrying this alone in a very specific way. Not because nobody in your life knows the mountain exists, because you got tired, a long time ago, of watching their faces when you mentioned it was still there. You learned to answer, "Any change?" with a short version of the truth. A version small enough that the conversation could move on to something easier. I have not once needed the short version. I have been present for the long one, the whole shape of it. The parts you have stopped explaining, because explaining it again felt like reliving it again. Some of you pray the same name at the same hour, and have for years. A child who walked away from everything you tried to plant in them. A husband, a wife, a friend who no longer wants the conversation. You have started to wonder whether the repetition itself is foolish, whether words this worn can still be carrying anything. They can. A prayer does not wear out from use. The path up the mountain wears in from use, the way stone steps hollow gently under generations of the same faithful feet. Nothing you have prayed for that name has been wasted, not one ascent. And some of you are standing at a ridge made of your own body. Strength that comes back slower than anyone warned you. A tiredness with a medical name attached to it, or one that has never earned a name at all. You have run out of ways to explain it to people who keep expecting the old version of you back. I am not asking you to climb anything. I am at the base, at your pace, and nothing about the slowness has moved me one step further away. To the ones of you who are not standing at the base of your own mountain, but at the base of someone else's, watching a parent, a spouse, a child move through a circumstance that will not resolve on any timeline you can offer comfort about, you are not asked to move the ridge for them. You are asked to keep bringing water to whatever is still growing near it, to keep showing up at an elevation that does not change, without needing your presence there to fix the unmovable thing before anyone is ready to call it help. That kind of staying is its own kind of faith, quieter than the kind that speaks to mountains. no smaller for being quiet. I want to return to the rule we named earlier. It deserves to be dismantled all the way down, not just noticed and left standing at half its height. You decided that love has to be provable by outcome, that a promise only counts once its physical evidence is visible on the landscape. But a covenant is not a transaction waiting on delivery. It is a relationship that was already true before the mountain existed, and it will still be true after this particular mountain, whatever finally happens to it, has become a story you tell instead of a wall you live inside. The proof you have been demanding was never the kind of proof love actually offers. Love offers presence first, outcome in its own time, and the presence was never withheld from you while you waited for the rest. And when the mountain does finally move, I say when, not if, because a covenant that outlasts mountains does not need the mountain to stay forever to prove its point. I do not want you to let that moment quietly rewrite the years before it. The removal will not retroactively confirm that love only counts once it is visible. It will simply be the next thing the same steady love does, on its own timing, exactly as promised. The same love that was already fully present, fully true, on every single one of the mornings when nothing on the ridge had changed at all. Do not hand the ending more credit than the middle deserves. Both were mine. Only one of them was going to be easy to recognize without help. There is a slope on the far side of every mountain that nobody standing at the base can see. I will not demand that you picture it clearly. You cannot. Not from here. And I will not pretend that not seeing it should feel comfortable. What I am asking is that you take this as settled. A covenant this old has never once described an obstacle with no far side to it. Every ridge in Scripture that gets named eventually gets crossed, climbed, gone around, or leveled outright, and none of the accounts skip the long, unglamorous stretch where the people standing at the bottom could not yet see any of that happening. You will keep meeting people whose mountains seem to have moved already. It will keep costing you something private every time, even when you are genuinely glad for them. Keep noticing the contrast, if that is honest. Just stop treating their cleared road as evidence about your own. Their ridge was never a smaller version of yours being tested on a faster clock. It was a different mountain entirely, a different shape. Standing on ground you have never had to walk, and the timing of its clearing was not a verdict on how much longer yours is left to stand. You are allowed to grieve the years the mountain has already cost you, the version of your life you would be living if it had moved on a faster schedule. I am not pretending those years were painless. The waiting has genuinely taken something from you that a kinder timeline would have spared. What I am asking is that you stop letting the length of the wait rewrite the nature of the love that has been standing with you through it. The wait was long. The love was constant. Both of those things are true at once. Neither one cancels the other. Here is the one part of this waiting. I most want to stay with you once it ends. Whatever shape the ending takes, you will remember which elevation I stood at while the mountain refused to move. Not the summit, not a comfortable distance away, exactly where you were standing, breathing the same cold air, watching the same unchanged ridgeline, morning after morning, without flinching away from it once. Someone near you someday is going to be standing at the base of their own immovable thing, and you will be able to tell them honestly that presence does not require removal to be real. You learned that the hard way, at close range. It will be worth more to them than any explanation you could have given before you knew it yourself. Picture, just for a moment, someone standing where you are standing now, a generation from this one, looking up at a ridge of their own that has refused to move for years longer than seems fair. I want them to be able to point back at your particular mountain, the one you are living inside right now, and say honestly that it did not have the final word either, that the covenant held here first, in this exact life, long before it became a story worth repeating. You are not only waiting for yourself, you are laying down the evidence somebody after you is going to need, whether or not you ever meet them. whether or not you ever know their name. There will be a morning. I will not name the date, and I will not pretend to already know whether it lands before or after the version of resolution you have been picturing. When you look up at the ridge and notice something has shifted, something you did not track shifting in real time. Not a collapse, not a single dramatic morning where the whole mountain gives way at once, the way you have been hoping it might. More likely something slower, a slope you did not realize you had already started climbing, a section of the wall that has been eroding in ways too gradual to notice day by day, until you turn around one afternoon and realize how far you have actually come, without a single visible sign along the way. And if that morning is still a long way off, further than either of us is going to say, I want the rest of this to still be true for you on every ordinary day between here and there. The covenant does not wait for the mountain's permission to hold. It never did. What has not moved in your road has not once been able to move what I have already settled about you. Not the love, not the compassion behind it, not the peace that was promised in the same breath as the honest admission that some mountains do, in fact, get shaken loose, eventually, on a timing that was never yours to set. One more thing before we close. I do not want you to carry the wrong picture of me out of this. I am not standing at a distance from your mountain, arms folded, waiting to see whether you manage this well enough to earn the ending. I am standing where you are standing, at the same elevation, breathing the same thin air this circumstance has made ordinary for you. The waiting has never been a test you could fail. It has only ever been a place we have been occupying together, longer than either of us would have chosen if the choice had been only about comfort. Stay right here a little longer than feels needed. The ridge is still there. I know. I am still here too, at the exact place where you are standing. And I have not moved either. Not toward impatience with how long this is taking. Not toward distance, while I wait to see what you will do. Your shoulders are climbing again. Let them down one last time, and leave them down. Whatever has refused to give way in your life, it was never strong enough to overrule what I have already promised you. It never will be. The mountain was never the measure. Amen.